What if the reason you feel tired, foggy, or less confident in the bedroom has nothing to do with age, stress, or hormones, and everything to do with something sitting in your kitchen right now? Something so ordinary that almost nobody thinks to question it. Before you reach for a supplement, a pill, or a quick fix, there's a simpler question worth asking. Are you actually giving your body the one resource it needs more than anything else to function properly? Today we're going to look at water, not as a boring health cliché, but as a hidden variable in circulation, hormone balance, and sexual performance that most men completely overlook. And by the end of this, you may never look at a glass of water the same way again. Let's start with a number that surprises most people the first time they hear it. Roughly 60% of the adult human body is water. Not fat, not muscle, not bone. Water. It fills your cells, it carries oxygen through your bloodstream, it lubricates your joints, and it plays a direct role in nearly every chemical reaction your body performs each second. So when hydration drops even slightly, the effects don't stay isolated to one system. They ripple outward, touching organs and functions you'd never think to connect to something as simple as how much you drank that day. One of the first places this shows up is circulation. And to understand why, it helps to think about what an erection actually is, biologically speaking. It isn't a muscular action in the way a bicep curl is. It's a vascular event. Blood vessels in the penis dilate, blood rushes in, and specialized tissue holds that blood in place long enough to create firmness. The entire process depends on smooth, unrestricted blood flow. No adequate circulation, no reliable response. That single fact reframes the entire conversation because it means sexual performance is, in many ways, a direct readout of cardiovascular health. Now, here's where hydration enters the picture in a way most people never consider. Blood itself is mostly water, roughly half its volume. When you're well hydrated, blood maintains a thinner, more fluid consistency, which allows it to move through vessels with less resistance. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard, oxygen delivery improves, and circulation throughout the body, including to the pelvic region, becomes more efficient. But when you're even mildly dehydrated, blood volume drops and blood becomes more viscous, thicker, and slower moving. Research on hydration and cardiovascular function has shown that this kind of mild fluid loss can reduce blood volume and increase the workload on the heart, which in turn can affect how efficiently blood reaches peripheral tissues, including the very vascular structures involved in erectile response. This is worth sitting with for a moment because it reframes something a lot of men misattribute. Fatigue in the middle of the day, a sense of sluggishness, a libido that feels quieter than usual. These are often blamed on stress, poor sleep, or simply getting older. And sometimes those factors are absolutely part of the picture. But dehydration is a variable that's rarely considered, despite being one of the easiest to correct. Before assuming something is wrong internally, it's worth asking a much simpler question. Has today included enough water to keep your circulatory system running the way it's designed to? There's another layer to this story, and it involves the lining of your blood vessels themselves, a thin layer of cells called the endothelium. This tissue produces nitric oxide, a molecule that helps blood vessels relax and widen, allowing blood to flow more freely. Nitric oxide production is deeply tied to erectile function, which is why so many conversations about sexual health eventually circle back to it. What's less discussed is that proper hydration supports healthy endothelial function, while chronic dehydration has been associated with increased oxidative stress on these vessel linings over time. In other words, water isn't just a passive ingredient in blood. It's part of the environment that determines how well your vascular system can do its job in the first place. But circulation is only one half of the story. The other half lives in your hormones, and this is where things get even more interesting. When the body senses a drop in hydration, it doesn't simply wait around for you to grab a glass of water. It shifts into a kind of internal triage mode, prioritizing systems it considers essential for immediate survival, like regulating blood pressure and core temperature. Systems it considers non-essential in the short term, including reproductive and sexual function, get deprioritized. This isn't a flaw in the body's design. It's an ancient survival mechanism responding to a modern lifestyle that often involves chronic, low-grade dehydration nobody notices. Studies examining hydration status have found a connection between fluid loss and elevated cortisol, the hormone most associated with stress. And cortisol has an inverse relationship with testosterone. When cortisol rises, testosterone tends to fall. This matters here because testosterone plays a central role in libido, energy levels, mood stability, and sexual performance. So a body under even mild dehydration stress may be quietly running a hormonal environment that works against the very outcomes men are often chasing through other means, supplements, workouts, or lifestyle changes that ignore this basic physiological input. There's also a quieter, less talked about piece of this puzzle, your liver and kidneys. These two organs are responsible for filtering, processing, and helping regulate hormone levels throughout the body. Both depend heavily on adequate hydration to function at their best. When water intake is consistently low, these organs have to work under more strain, and their efficiency at processing hormonal byproducts can decline. Over time, this can compound the very issues we've already discussed, creating a feedback loop where poor hydration quietly undermines circulation, hormone balance, and organ efficiency all at once, without ever announcing itself as the root cause. So if hydration matters this much, the obvious next question is how much, and more specifically, how you actually go about drinking it, because the details here matter more than most people assume. General guidance from health organizations typically points to somewhere in the range of 2.5 to 3 liters of total fluid per day for adult men, though this varies based on body size, climate, activity level, and overall health. That number isn't a rigid prescription so much as a starting reference point, a rough map rather than an exact address. What's often overlooked is timing. Drinking a large volume of water all at once isn't necessarily more effective than spacing it throughout the day. The body can only absorb and utilize fluid at a certain rate before the excess simply passes through as waste. Sipping water steadily across your waking hours tends to support more consistent hydration than trying to catch up with a few large gulps late in the day. This is part of why some people drink plenty of water yet still feel unhydrated. The volume is there, but the pacing works against them. Timing relative to meals matters too. Drinking large amounts of water immediately before or after eating can dilute digestive enzymes and stomach acid, potentially slowing digestion and nutrient absorption. Many nutrition researchers suggest leaving a window of around 30 minutes after a meal before resuming significant water intake, giving your digestive system room to do its work without interference. And if you've just eaten something naturally water-rich, like watermelon or citrus fruit, your body has already received a meaningful amount of fluid, so layering more water immediately on top can actually work against smooth digestion rather than supporting it. Then there's the question of temperature, something almost nobody thinks about, but that has a real physiological basis. Very cold water can cause blood vessels in the digestive tract to constrict slightly, which may slow digestion and force the body to expend extra energy, simply warming the fluid to internal temperature. Room temperature or lightly warm water tends to be gentler on the digestive system and is absorbed with less friction. This is one of those small, almost invisible habits that, over weeks and months, can add up to a measurably smoother digestive and hydration experience. There's also a habit worth mentioning that traditional wellness systems emphasized long before modern science caught up: drinking slowly rather than gulping. When you take small sips and allow water to briefly mix with saliva before swallowing, digestive enzymes in saliva get a head start on preparing the body to absorb what's coming. It sounds like a minor detail, almost too simple to matter, but small mechanical habits like this are often the difference between water that passes through the body quickly and water that's actually put to efficient use. One of the simplest, most immediate ways to gauge your hydration status doesn't require an app, a wearable, or a lab test. It's your own urine color. A pale, light yellow tone generally signals adequate hydration. A darker, more concentrated yellow suggests your body needs more fluid. And interestingly, urine that's completely clear all the time can actually indicate overhydration, a less discussed but very real condition where excessive water intake dilutes electrolytes in the blood. Balance, not extremes, is the underlying theme here, something that applies to nearly every system we've talked about so far. Sleep deserves its own mention in this story, because it's the quiet variable connecting almost everything else. Drinking large amounts of water right before bed can disrupt sleep through frequent nighttime bathroom trips, fragmenting the deep sleep stages where much of the body's testosterone production actually occurs. So, a habit that seems purely hydration-focused can indirectly undercut the hormonal benefits we discussed earlier, creating an unintentional trade-off between fluid intake and hormone regulation. The solution isn't to drink less water overall, but to shift more of it earlier in the day and taper off in the hours before sleep. Stepping back, there's a broader pattern worth noticing in all of this. Modern life is full of subtle dehydration triggers that most people never register as such: air-conditioned offices, caffeinated drinks that have a mild diuretic effect, long stretches at a desk where thirst signals get ignored in favor of finishing one more task. None of these are dramatic on their own, but stacked together across a single day, they can leave the body running in a persistent, low-level fluid deficit, one that never feels dramatic enough to notice, yet consistently enough to influence energy, circulation, and hormonal balance in the background. This is part of why hydration is such an underrated piece of the sexual health conversation. It doesn't carry the urgency of a medical symptom, and it doesn't come with the marketing appeal of a specialized product. It's just water. Unbranded, inexpensive, and easy to dismiss precisely because it's so accessible. But the biology doesn't care about marketing appeal. Circulation depends on fluid volume. Hormone regulation depends on organ function that depends on hydration. And sexual performance, at its physiological core, depends on both of those systems working together smoothly. None of this means hydration is a singular fix for every challenge related to libido, energy, or performance. Sexual health is influenced by sleep quality, stress levels, cardiovascular fitness, nutrition, mental health, relationship dynamics, and underlying medical conditions, and anyone experiencing persistent concerns in this area should speak with a healthcare provider rather than relying on any single lifestyle adjustment. What hydration does offer is something simpler and arguably more powerful in a different way: a foundation. A baseline condition that either supports every other effort you make or quietly works against it in the background, whether you're aware of it or not. So here's a thought worth sitting with as this comes to a close. How often do you actually pay attention to your hydration throughout an average day? Not out of fear, not out of urgency, but out of a genuine understanding that something this simple is quietly wired into how your entire body performs, including in the moments that matter most to you personally. Your body has been sending signals about this for your entire life: fatigue, dryness, darker urine, subtle drops in energy, and most of us have been trained to look past all of it, searching for more complicated explanations when the answer was already sitting in a glass on the counter. Health rarely comes down to one dramatic intervention. More often, it comes down to a handful of quiet, consistent habits that compound over time, unnoticed until you look back and realize how much they were shaping the way you felt every single day. Water is one of those habits, easy to overlook, easy to underestimate, and yet deeply connected to the systems that govern how energized, balanced, and confident you feel in your own body. Maybe the next glass you drink isn't just about quenching thirst. Maybe it's a small, deliberate investment in a system that's been asking for your attention all along.